Hi, today we are going to discuss about the concept of leverage in finance, chapter 5. And just a quick introduction. Leverage in general, before we even move to finance, is how can we use some tools, instruments to maximize some kind of results. In our daily life, we try to maximize our time, our money by time management, by budgeting. That's a more general definition of leverage. Now, moving into the finance area, a business is thinking how to make the most profits by leveraging the fixed cost. Those fixed costs are the ones that a business pays the same. That's the very definition of a fixed cost, the cost that stays the same regardless of the volume of productions, such as rent, depreciation, property taxes, and executive salaries. So, since they have to pay the same amount of fixed cost every month, well, they might use some kind of leverage, make the most of this fixed cost, produce more. That's the concept of leverage. So remember, leverage is always related to the fixed cost. So now, by this point, you read all the way with the introduction about leverage, the one we just talked about. So now, in this recording, we are going to discuss about the break-even point for a business. Before we get there, those are the fixed costs we just discussed earlier. So, degree of operating leverage or operating leverage is related to fixed operating costs like lease, depreciation, executive salaries, property taxes. And the name operating comes because those fixed costs are related to the production process. So it's going to be operating leverage. Now there are going to be some other type of fixed costs. They are called fixed financial costs, which is really the interest that a business pays when it borrows money from debt financing. For example, if you need a loan to buy some equipment and any other financial needs, and you pay a mortgage back, which is or a property, a fixed type of cost, but it's financial related. So this type of fixed financial cost is going to be related to degree of financial leverage. So from here, we are going to discuss the case of two types of businesses. So we try to figure out how much a business should produce at a minimum to break even. Why do we have to know that? Because we know that we have to produce above that certain level, which is called quantity at break-even point, to make profits. Any production below our break-even point is going to bring a loss for the business. So knowing about the break-even point for a business is very important. Now, there are different type of businesses. Some of them are more risk-taker, aggressive type of businesses, and some of them are more conservative. Let's start with the more aggressive type of business, risk-taker also called. How is this business going to behave differently than the conservative one? Well, the aggressive firm business use more technology, more equipment, so goes more aggressively on economic growth, maybe borrows money or involves more production costs, because this type of firm business, aggressive one, wants to grow fast. So is going to end up with more fixed cost and probably less variable cost because it relies more on the technology. And because of that, the break-even point for aggressive business is going to be higher. So an aggressive business is going to end up with a higher break-even point, which means it has to produce more to break even. And then everything above the break-even point is a profit. And we have an example here to illustrate this case. So we have units sold. For different level of units sold, let's say those are cars or computers and units. How much are total variable cost given? How much are fixed costs? This is 60,000 You see they are the same fixed cost. And this is total cost, which we calculate as total variable cost plus total fixed cost. Total revenue, quantity times price, quantity in units times price, that's going to give total revenue. And then that's going to be calculated income and loss for different level of production. And profit or loss, which is total revenue minus total cost. You see here is a negative. Total revenue minus total cost, again negative. So we can see here that the break-even point in units is 50,000, but let's see how we calculate that, because you are going to have to calculate this break-even point in units. So the formula that's given for break-even point in units is fixed cost, total fixed cost, divided by contribution margin. And contribution margin is defined as price minus variable cost per unit. Now, fixed cost is given, 60,000. Remember that column that stays the same. Now we have to calculate price and variable cost per unit to be able to calculate break-even point. So you can see here the price, total revenue, I said earlier, is calculated as quantity times price. We have quantity in units, we have revenue, we don't know price. So to find out price, we are going to divide total revenue by quantity. 40,000 divided by 20,000, that's $2 per unit. 80,000 divided by 40,000, 2. So my unit price is 2. Okay? Now what else do I need in my formula? Variable cost per unit. I'm going to use the same logic here. I do have total variable cost and I have units sold. Total variable cost is calculated as variable cost per unit that I don't know times quantity that I know. So I'm going to divide variable cost by quantity, and you see if you divide this by this, variable cost per unit is 80 cents. So it's going to cost me in variable cost 80 cents to produce this 1 unit. So now I finish up the calculations. 60,000, $2 minus 80 cents. So I need to produce 50,000 units to break even. So the interpretation is any quantity produced above 50,000 is going to give me a profit. Any quantity below these units is going to give me a loss. And this is just a visual representation of the same concept for our example. You see that's my quantity in thousand, it says here, so that's 50,000. You see how fast the business growth above break-even point, because it covered at this point, it covered fixed cost, and this is going to grow faster. However, if they cannot manage to make 50,000 units, the risk for a loss is higher. Suppose we are at 20,000 units. You see all of this pink area, it's a loss. So leverage is a sword which is a two-edged sword. It can magnify profits when you are above the break-even point, or it can magnify losses if you are below break-even point. This is why it's called leverage or aggressive to begin with. I'm gonna do a next video about the conservative firm, because I want to keep the videos shorter to be able to upload them faster.